By the end of the course, hopefully we'll be able to identify markers of process. And then here, we're about to learn more about active and passive voices and to describe a process as the learning objectives today. Goal kita pada pembelajaran kali ini adalah untuk mengidentifikasi penanda dari proses, untuk mempelajari lebih lanjut tentang active and passive voices, dan juga untuk mendeskripsikan suatu proses. In this reading part, we'll identify markers of process. It's beneficial because by using signal words or markers of process, you'll be able to make the readers understand us better. There are common signal words or markers for a process. If you're going to tell someone about a process from the beginning, how would you start? You'll probably say something like first, initially, to begin with. So there are what we call signal words. So there are some signal words used at the beginning. These words are signals that you tell a process is starting. How about for the next process? We may have second, after, then, next, until, and later. They are signal words that might be found in the middle. They signal that a new process is being described. How to describe the last process? It might be the word finally or at last. For example, you can say finally as the last process. You can shut down your computer. So finally marks the end of a. Terdapat beberapa penanda untuk menjelaskan suatu proses. Untuk memulai proses kita bisa menggunakan at first, firstly, initially, to begin with, begin by. Untuk melanjutkan proses, kita bisa menggunakan second, third step, afterward, as soon as, meanwhile, then, dan lainnya. Sedangkan untuk mengakhiri proses, kita bisa menggunakan finally dan at last sebagai penanda prosesnya berakhir. Let's read the sample paragraph 1. What are the signal words for a process here? Let's read this paragraph. Yes, we have first and also then. Yeah, then. How do the signal words such as first and then help you understand the paragraph? So here, they make the details in the paragraph easier to understand. We know which one is the first and which one is the second process. Di sini kita bisa melihat penanda proses yang digunakan pada paragraf, yaitu first sebagai penanda bahwa ini adalah proses yang pertama, dan juga then sebagai penanda bahwa ini adalah proses berikutnya. Now the sample paragraph 2. Let's have a look this paragraph. We can see point by point of a process in this paragraph. And we have the time signal for the process. That is then. And we're going to study about structure, especially regarding active and passive voices. In conversation, it's common to use active voice. For example, Andy kicks the ball. So when it's clear about the person, Andy here, who's performing an action, kicks the ball, so that's what we call the active voice. However, it's also possible to use the passive voice when it's used in formal text, such as reports of crimes and scientific context. Sometimes we also use the passive voice because we don't know or don't want to express who performed the action. For example, my car was stolen yesterday. Here, it's not possible to tell the person who stole it. So, we don't know or maybe we don't want to express or perform the action. Oke, tentang structure, active, and passive voices ini sebetulnya seringkali kita gunakan dalam percakapan sehari-hari, terutama untuk active voice. Ketika kita menggunakan subject dan juga verb ya pada suatu kalimat, maka itu adalah active voice. Misalkan Andi kicks the ball. Andi menendang bola. Di sini jelas siapa pelaku yang menendang bola, yaitu adalah Andi sebagai subjek di awal. Maka ini adalah active voice. Sedangkan untuk passive voice, kita biasa gunakan ketika menjelaskan hal-hal yang formal. Misalkan pada suatu jurnal atau pada suatu laporan kriminal. Kita juga bisa menggunakan passive voice ketika kita tidak tahu atau tidak mau mengemukakan siapa pelaku dari suatu kejadian. Misalkan, my car was stolen yesterday. Di sini masih belum jelas siapa pelakunya. Hanya ada mobil yang dicuri. Pencurinya tidak diinformasikan. Dan di situ sangat mungkin kita menggunakan passive voice. Let's study about the basic form here. Here, in passive voice, the most important thing or person that can be from an object becomes the subject of the sentence. The subjects can be singular or plural. Then, they are followed by the verb to be and verb 3, or what we call past participle. In other words, forming passive voice requires some elements such as the verb to be and a past participle or verb 3. We can use passive voice with most tenses as follows. Dalam passive voice, yang paling penting kita lakukan adalah mengubah dari objek menjadi subjek. Ya. Dan kemudian kita gunakan to be. To be ini bisa berupa am, is, are, was, were, tergantung dengan tenses yang digunakan. Kemudian kita gunakan kata kerja bentuk ketiga atau yang disebut dengan past participle. Selain itu, harap perhatikan bahwa subjek yang digunakan akan mempengaruhi to be yang akan kita pakai. Misalkan, bila subjeknya tunggal, seperti book, maka kita gunakan to be-nya is atau was. Sedangkan bila subjeknya adalah jamak, misalkan books, maka to be-nya adalah are atau juga were. Tergantung dengan tenses yang akan kita pakai. Remember that there are 3 basic rules for converting sentences from active voice into passive voice. The first one, the places of subject and object should be interchanged in the sentence. And then, the new subject is followed by the verb to be. For example here, was or were. After that, only third form of the verb, or what we call past participle, can be used as a main verb in passive voice. For example here, in the simple past, the classes were cleaned yesterday by them. Here the classes become our focus. Classes were objects that become the subjects. And the past participle used here is the word clean, verb 3. So from the simple past, active voice, they cleaned the classes yesterday becomes the classes were cleaned yesterday by them. And then in the past continuous, since it has verb ing in the middle, so we use subject plus was or were being, and then we put verb 3 at the end. So if from they were cleaning the classes becomes the classes were being cleaned by them. And then in the past perfect, for the subject, and then we add had plus verb 3. So from they had cleaned the classes becomes the classes had been cleaned by them. So been here is integrated with the word cleaned. Had been verb 3. So we need to put subject plus had been and then verb 3. Kita bisa lihat di sini terjadi perubahan struktur. Misalkan untuk simple past, they cleaned the classes. Di sini kita bisa lihat they berubah menjadi by them. By them ini bisa dituliskan atau bisa juga tidak. Tapi yang jelas di sini kita bisa lihat the classes dari yang awalnya objek menjadi subjek. The classes dan diikuti dengan to be, was atau were. Karena ini classes maka menjadi were. Dan di sini kata kerja yang digunakan adalah kata kerja bentuk ketiga, cleaned. Begitu juga dengan tenses lainnya. Hanya ada perubahan pada to be, was, were, being, atau juga untuk past perfect kita gunakan had been. The other formulas for the present tenses, we have simple present. Here we use is, am, are as the to be in the middle. So basically the differences are only for the to be's, for the present, past, and the future. Now we'll discuss for the present, simple or what we call simple present. In the simple present, when we have they clean the classes every day, it becomes the classes are clean every day by them. Then when we have present continuous, subject is am, are, being plus verb 3. So when we have they are cleaning the classes, it becomes the classes are being cleaned by them. And then for the present perfect, when we have subject, has or have been, depending on the subject, and then we add verb 3 at the end, we have to make a sentence like this. In an active voice, they have cleaned the classes. It becomes the classes have been cleaned by them. If we want to say, or when we want to tell what performs the action while using the passive voice, we use the preposition by. For example, here we can see by them. Dalam membentuk kalimat pasif dari future tense dan juga modal verbs, yang kita gunakan adalah kita melakukan penambahan kata be dan kata kerja bentuk ketiga. Jadi semua kata kerja akan menjadi kata kerja bentuk ketiga sebagai kata kerja utama. Let's have some practice. For the exercise 1, underline the passive verbs in the text below. Try to identify the passive verbs in this text. Now, as we can see, can be released, is called, are broken, is derived. They are passive verbs in the text here. How about exercise 2? We need to use the passive to complete the text about making paper. This text is about a procedure to make paper. So we can use the simple present. All activities here must be done. We need to put the verb in brackets into the correct form. Have you got the answer? Now let's discuss. Don't forget to see the subject in order to decide whether you need to use is or are after the subject. Okay, so that's the first. The second, and the last. Did you get all correct? Well done. In the speaking part, we're going to study about describing process. So the topic is describing a process. Have you ever tried to describe a process in order to help your friends or maybe your family in order to use a computer? Describing a process is telling step by step how an activity is done. When we want to give instruction to tell a person or people about how an activity must be done, for example, in order to set up a computer network, we can follow two simple steps here. First, use signal words to indicate the steps in the process. We can use firstly, then, next, after, before, and finally. After that, we use the imperative form of verbs such as open, close, save, etc. Remember, we cannot use continuous verbs here, only base verbs like open, close, save. It's not possible to use opening, closing, saving as the imperative here. It's also possible to use negative expressions such as don't open, don't close, don't save, don't smoke, don't touch me, for example. Here, when you buy, for example, a new computer, it comes with an instruction book telling you how to use it. This instruction book can be written using signal words and imperatives. First, plug your computer to the power outlet and then turn it on by pressing the power button. Jadi dalam mendeskripsikan suatu proses, kita bisa gunakan signal words untuk menjelaskan urutan proses. Misalkan firstly, then, next, after, before, dan finally. Selanjutnya, kita gunakan imperative form of verbs seperti open, close, save, atau dalam bentuk negatif, don't open, don't close, don't save. Misalkan di sini kita lihat first digunakan di awal dan juga plug your computer. Ini adalah imperative form of verbs tentang instruksi yang harus kita lakukan pertama kali. Dan selanjutnya kita lihat then. Ya, ini adalah signal word yang kedua, langkah yang kedua. Dan selanjutnya ada instruksi turn it on by pressing the power button. Ini adalah imperative form. Turn it on. Okay? Now let's do it in practice. Let's identify the imperative forms of verbs and the signal words indicating the sequence of the process. Can you identify the imperative forms of verbs here? We have open, and click. How about the signal words indicating the sequence of the process? Can you identify? We have firstly, next, and then. Again, try to identify the imperative forms of verbs and the signal words indicating the sequence of the process. We start from the imperative forms of verbs. Can you identify? Okay, we have ensure and click. How about the signal words indicating the sequence of the process? Yes, we have finally. So finally, that's the end of our material. So see you again in the next meeting.